Morning, everybody. It's 7 o'clock here in the UK. You are very welcome to spend your breakfast with us here at Sky News this morning. £5,000 to scrap your old boiler and make your home greener with a heat pump. But that cash will only help a tiny fraction of homes in England. So what about the rest? And how hard is it to make the switch? We'll be joined by the International Trade Secretary Anne-Marie Trevelyan shortly. Plus, we'll speak to the head of the Climate Crisis Advisory Group, and that's Sir David King. Also to come for you this morning, with daily COVID cases rising to the highest point in 3 months yesterday, there's criticism the booster vaccine rollout is happening just too slowly. We'll speak to a professor of primary care and public health, and that's at 8:20. In addition, we're going to be speaking to the comedian and pub landlord Al Murray about his new series on Sky History, looking at Britain's military past. That's at 20:10. It's Tuesday, the 19th of October. Reveals the grants of £5,000 for some households to scrap their old gas boiler so the government can hit climate targets, but families won't be forced to do it.
Could sites like the Green Park turbine in Reading become more common? We'll find out later when the government's expected to release full details of its net zero by 2050 strategy.
The coal plants, they can all close in your state?
No, they're not going to close in the state. You can't close them with reliability. We need reliability.
A mountain to climb. We tracked down the West Virginia senator who's holding up America's progress on tackling climate change. Strolling to a station on the morning of the attack, the CCTV that Sky News understands shows the suspect in Sir David Amess's murder.
It's time to fix your music, I'm no longer your muse.
Let down by the police, the parents of a woman thought to have been killed by a man she had reported for stalking speak for the first time to Sky News.
We wouldn't have let her go up to the field on that day on her own and prior to that, and we wouldn't have let her go anywhere on her own after that. I think they've let her down big time.
Emotional scenes as thousands of prisoners arrested during the military takeover in Myanmar are freed. Good morning. People will be able to apply for grants of several £1,000s to ditch their gas boiler and change to heating that produces lower emissions. It's all part of the government's plan to hit its climate targets. But families won't be forced to do it, as our science and technology editor Tom Clarke reports.
Heating our homes with gas is one of the single biggest contributions each of us makes to global warming. Changing that will take time and a lot of money. But some, like Viv Chalice, are already enjoying the benefits.
It's going to make a lot of difference, especially to people like myself, pensioners, young families that haven't got a lot of money coming in, to be able to see a reduction in the price of the bills coming down. It's going to make a big, big difference.
Her home was one of the first in the neighbourhood to be upgraded by her housing association, Clarion, and a government funding scheme. Here they're putting a thick warranty of insulation on the outside of the house. The front door's been moved forward to accommodate that, and triple glazed windows are being sealed into the property from the outside. And up in the loft, a load more insulation, an airtight membrane, and to manage condensation, a mechanical ventilation system. Together, that keeps the house warm and dry. It's the work required for a home like this to have its boiler replaced with a more low-carbon heat pump. A process the government wants to replicate at scale with its new strategy, suggesting it might phase out gas boilers entirely by 2035. But there's a lot of work ahead. Around 65% of the UK's 29 million homes will need energy efficiency upgrades to meet net zero targets. Some 60% could cost less than £1,000 to make heat pump ready. But the remainder of upgrades will cost much more, with the overall bill for energy efficiency some £55 billion by 2050. Given the scale of the shift, the government will also have to price energy in a way to persuade people to change.
A very, very simple move that would change how we think about gas boilers versus heat pumps, just make electricity cheaper by putting those policy costs somewhere else. The other thing to add is there's never been a better time to do that and reduce electricity bills than a time where we're facing an energy price spike, and people are really struggling with their bills and will do through the winter and into the spring.
Getting all of us to give up on gas is a big ask. We have the technology to do it. The trick is deploying it in a way that's affordable, fair, and most of all keeps us warm. Tom Clarke, Sky News.
Anne-Marie Trevelyan for the government with us now. Good morning to you, Ms Trevelyan. We only have a limited amount of time this morning, so let's canter through. £10,000 to install the heat pumps, only £5,000 as an incentive. So why should people do it?
So this is a fantastic announcement that the Prime Minister has made today, and it's going to help as we move through this transition in our domestic heating arrangements to help those who want to crack on now and indeed over many years ahead to change their boilers to a clean energy solution. I don't know if you know, Kay, but I've been restoring a house and I've just put in a hydrogen-ready boiler into mine because of the nature of the house I live in. But we were already seeing a huge amount of investments, billions of pounds going through, as your package spoke about, the local authorities who were investing for those who have the greatest need to improve the insulation in their homes and the least personal resources to do it. So we're already making huge strides for those most in need to make sure that, because in this journey that we're doing, it's about reducing the amount of energy we use if we can, as well as, of course, using clean energy. So making houses better insulated, as well as then having heat pumps as people move to those clean energy solutions, is all part of this enormous and really far-reaching package in the heat and building strategy today.
And has the heat pump reduced your bills?
So I'm still restoring the house, but it will absolutely help. And one of the things I've done also is to insulate. I mean, I'm in a very old Northumbrian house, to insulate it because I want to reduce the amount of energy that I use overall. That, of course, is the ultimate. As we move to building net zero homes in future, new homes will be much, much more efficient. But for millions of us who live in old houses, that retrofitting, that insulation, and then having the clean energy solutions that we use to generate the power that we use will be critically important. But this is a journey, it is a transition when we talk about net zero. This is a journey we're all on together, and the Prime Minister is committed to give a framework that means we can all participate as citizens in helping meet that net zero challenge.
OK, let's canter through. £450 million pledge. Green organisations and the Green Party saying that's only covering 90,000 heat pumps. We've got 29 million households in the UK. How are you going to pay for the rest of them?
So, as I said, for a lot of the local authority homes, there is already a huge scheme of billions of pounds being used to help them to decarbonise, to insulate and indeed to change their heating systems. This 450 million, which is committed over the next 3 years, will help those who really want to crack on, to give them effectively a cost-neutral opportunity to change the gas boiler they have now to a heat pump or some other clean energy solution, as I've done with a hydrogen-ready boiler, so that we are moving towards that. So I think this is a great first part of the programme, but for those most in need, there is already a huge local authority scheme underway.
OK, so I'm sure your lovely house in Northumberland has got a very nice garden that you've had to dig up for the heat pump. A lot of homes don't have gardens, so how do they make it work?
So no, I haven't got a heat pump. I've got a hydrogen-ready boiler, so like a gas boiler.
Excellent.
Will be able
Good
to,
for you. What about
take the
people who need to dig up their gardens for a heat pump, but they haven't got a garden?
Well,
what happens to them? What's the plan there?
So a lot of the heat pumps will be air source heat pumps, which are, if you like, the opposite of fridge, and you can clip them on the outside of a home, and they draw in, they use a differential heat system to help source it, and that's what will be used for many, and that can be used in flats as well as houses. It doesn't require a ground source heat pump, which is what you're describing, which would be about digging up gardens.
Excellent. What about people who don't want to get rid of their gas boiler? Is it going to be a voluntary scheme?
So in the short term, of course, this is a voluntary scheme, but every 10 to 15 years, and I've spoken to my local gas teams about this, we all get a new boiler. There is a change, the equipment doesn't last forever. So as part of, as I say, the transition, this journey to net zero, as we as domestic citizens make changes to our homes, these support frameworks, these financial frameworks are there, but also we will be driving those changes in regulation so that the next time you maybe want to change the boiler in your home, the opportunity opportunity will be to either have a heat pump or indeed perhaps, as I have, a hydrogen-ready boiler, so that this will be part of the transition and the normal part of things, in the same way that when you buy your next car, you will probably buy a net zero emissions car, perhaps an electric vehicle, because this is part of the cycle of renewing the assets that we have as part of our daily lives.
Yeah, staggeringly more expensive, though, than a gas boiler, aren't they? So if people are thinking about what to do, like the boiler's come to its end of life over the next 18 months, they can still buy a gas boiler if they want to.
There will be a point at which that changes, but yes, for now that's the case, which is why this is a transition, as I say. But the key point, of course, like we know with so many things, is that at the moment the heat pumps are relatively small volumes in production, but of course as more of us take them on and invest in them, the cost of production will come down, and therefore, like all volume sales, they will become much cheaper. And there's some really impressive commitments from some of the energy companies who want to drive that change to leaning in themselves to make sure that they can help customers make that change effectively.
Just time for another couple of questions this morning. Hopefully they'll come and see us soon. The boosters, so from boilers to boosters, the booster jabs, not much of an uptake on that. Why do you think it is? What are you going to do about it?
So we've seen, I think, over 3 million take up the booster jab already, and children, of course, through schools are getting theirs, and there's more announcements this week to help boost that part of it. But I think really importantly, the booster jab for COVID is one that we are encouraging people to take. And I've just had actually a text yesterday from my doctor encouraging me to go and have mine. 6 months after your second jab that you will have had earlier in the year, you have the opportunity to go and have that, and of course a flu jab as well. So we're encouraging all those who are vulnerable, anyone like me who's over 50, please do make sure that you get your booster jab to help make sure that we are able to continue living in the back to new normal that we're able to do as a result of the incredible vaccine programme that we've rolled out this year.
I'm significantly older than you, Mr. Relly, and I've already had mine and my flu jab as well. And the flu jab hurt more, just so if anybody's a little bit worried about the booster, it doesn't hurt at all. While we've got you, let me ask you about, with your hat on for Secretary of State for International Trade, we thought that this Aussie deal had been done. That's certainly the impression we were given by Liz Truss when she was in charge at Trade. But on Friday, the Australian Trade Secretary left London without one. What's going on?
So the way our trade deals work is we start with because we're doing this on our own merit, where there is we're not part of the EU anymore, is we launch a consultation and we ask our businesses and citizens what they want to see from a trade deal, and then we discuss it, and then we publish what's called an agreement in principle. That's what was announced in June by my predecessor Liz Truss. From there, that was a 14-page document that has to be turned into a 2,600-page document of legal text. So that's what we've been working on since then. And the Australian Trade Minister, Dan Tehan, who was here last week, was here. He and I were going through some of the sort of final details to make sure that both sides are happy with the complexity, because when these deals are in place, we want our businesses on both sides to be able to know that these are robust legal documents and that we can get absolutely the best trading activity and all the other things that are in this deal, a really exciting liberalising deal, to work as effectively as possible. So we're just about there on the legal text, and then we'll be able to publish it shortly.
Fantastic. Need to let you go. Good to talk to you this morning. Speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kay. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Hearing from the Prime Minister, actually, later on, about 9:20 this morning. Also hearing how the government intends to cut those climate emissions to net zero by 2050. The strategy is expected to focus on the UK's need for more clean, green energy sources and a new nuclear power project. Well, our reporter Aisha Zaid is with us now. Good morning to you. I know you're up at the wind turbine, I think, in Reading. Massive thing, if anybody's seen it on the M4. I'm sure we'll see it when it gets a bit lighter where you are. But that is one of the alternative energy sources that the government will be talking about, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's right. I think we can expect more discussion on wind power today. These details will really underpin how the UK aims to deliver on its commitment to becoming net zero by 2050. We expect measures which will help create what's been described as a secure, homegrown, clean energy sector, eliminating the need for fossil fuels and reducing reliance on gas. Of course, we've very recently seen the knock-on effects of volatile gas prices globally. Now, we can anticipate a number of measures to be discussed. I think one of the key areas is likely to be the UK's need for a new nuclear project, a nuclear power project. Currently, around a fifth of the electricity generated here comes from nuclear power, but the problem lies in the fact that of the reactors that are currently being used, they're all expected to be retired by 2035. And then, of course, I think we can expect to see many more measures discussing how we can increase the use of other clean energy sources. So all these details expected later today.
OK, lovely. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Sky News has obtained CCTV footage that we understand shows the man suspected of killing Sir David Amess on the morning of the attack. 25-year-old Ali, who has been arrested on suspicion of the murder of Sir David, is seen walking slowly along the pavement on Friday morning. The video footage was filmed from outside a convenience store on Highgate Road at 8:44 a.m. Ali, who lives in North London, was initially arrested at the scene of the attack on suspicion of murder and has since been detained under the Terrorism Legislation Act. MPs from all parties sat shoulder to shoulder at a service for Sir David. About 800 MPs and peers dressed in black filed into St Margaret's Church next to Westminster Abbey in silence. Southend will be granted city status as a tribute to Sir David, the Prime Minister has announced. The actor, Robert Carlyle, has paid tribute to the murdered MP. All 6 episodes of Series 2 Cobra Cyber War were due to be released on Friday. In fact, they were, but Sky has taken the decision to temporarily remove the final 3 episodes from your box set. Sir David's death is the reason for that. We're told there is a sensitive theme within the last 3 episodes of Season 2. Still to come on the programme for you at 7:45, speaking to the Minister of Tourism for the Maldives about the staggering number of tourists they've welcomed this year amid the coronavirus pandemic. 8:20, we'll speak to a Professor of Primary Care and Public Health to chat about the rising COVID cases and whether the booster vaccine rollout is happening fast enough. And then at 8:30, speaking to the Labour MP Sarah Owen about why she's introducing a bill to extend paid bereavement leave to women who miscarry before 24 weeks. A woman thought to have been killed by a man she'd reported for stalking her was let down by the police, her parents have told Sky News. 23-year-old Gracie Spinks was stabbed in the neck at stables near her Chesterfield home in June. Gerard Tubb reports.
It's time to face your music, I'm no longer your muse.
Gracie Spinks was a music-loving 23-year-old. Furloughed during lockdown, she took a job in a Derbyshire warehouse, where a supervisor became so infatuated with her, she reported him to the police.
Her best friend, Ben,
Gracie's parents thought it had been resolved, but 4 months later, she was dead.
What do you know happened?
Of that morning, that a guy who Gracie had previously reported to the police for stalking her approached her that morning and murdered her.
Gracie was a keen rider.
Go on, Gracie!
And it was when Michael Sellers turned up at her livery stables in February that she accused him of stalking. She was found fatally stabbed at the stables in June, and Sellers' body was found in a neighbouring field a few hours later. Her family only then learned that knives, an axe and a note saying "don't lie" had been found there 6 weeks earlier and handed to the police.
This bag of weapons had been handed in on the 6th of May, and as far as we know, the police didn't act upon it and join up the dots, basically, from Gracie's complaints. And yeah, but other than that, we've not really heard from the police now, so we don't know.
Derbyshire police say they're unable to comment because of an investigation by the Independent Office for Police Conduct, which says its investigation is ongoing. Gracie's father believes she was let down by the police.
They'd put 2 and 2 together and warned her about this. Therefore, we wouldn't have let her go up to the field on that day on her own and prior to that, and we wouldn't have let her go anywhere on her own after that. So that's the view that I've got with it. I think they've let her down big time.
Today would have been Gracie's 24th birthday, and a vigil will be held tonight at her graveside. Her family is now campaigning for extra funding to give each police force a dedicated point of contact for stalking complaints. They want other women's safety to be Gracie's legacy. Gerard Tubb, Sky News, Chesterfield.
Absolute tragedy. Now, a mass release of prisoners is underway in Myanmar. It comes after the country's military rulers announced an amnesty for thousands of people arrested for anti-government activities during February's army takeover. Joining us is our Southeast Asia correspondent, Siobhan Robbins. Hi, Siobhan. So talk us through what's happening.
Morning, Kay. Really emotional scenes outside prisons across Myanmar after this amnesty, which actually began last night with some prisoners already being released. We've seen families who, some of them didn't even know if they'd ever see their loved ones again, who have gone for months without word, waiting, desperate to see if their family member is among those 5,600 which we're told are being released. Of course, we don't actually know if that will be the extent of the people who are released or if it will actually be smaller. But why is this happening? Well, the big question is it's really a political move by the junta leader, because he has been excluded from a meeting of Southeast Asian nations which is taking place. That's a massive shun for him, and it follows the ASEAN special envoy cancelling a trip to Myanmar because he wasn't allowed access to speak to prisoners, including Aung San Suu Kyi. I think in terms of how important this release is, of course, it's absolutely important for people who haven't seen their family members. But in terms of big target prisoners, I think we're very unlikely to see the release of someone like Aung San Suu Kyi. And actually, opponents say this is just a distraction technique to try and get foreign governments on board. Interestingly, the UN Special Rapporteur, Tom Andrews, was saying that he believes the military government is motivated by three things: money, legitimacy and getting weapons. And by blocking access to ASEAN, they basically blocked this call for legitimacy. So he's trying to make these tentative steps to suggest, yes, I am starting to release prisoners. What does it really mean in a country where more than 1,000 people have already been killed by security forces since February, more than 9,000 people have been arrested, and violence is continuing?
OK, thank you, Siobhan, thank you. Looking at some of the other stories making headlines for you here on The Breakfast Show. This Tuesday morning, 2 adults, 2 children have been taken to hospital after a house was destroyed by an explosion in Scotland. Goodness me, look at those pictures. Residents in Ayr were evacuated following last night's blast that could be heard for miles around. 3 other homes were also badly damaged. Police in Scotland say inquiries are continuing into the cause of the explosion. Infrared light therapy could be helping people live with dementia. Scientists in Durham have used an infrared light on a special helmet as part of a trial and found improvements in the memory, motor function and processing skills of participants. Donald Trump's filed a lawsuit in an attempt to block a congressional committee from obtaining White House records of the Capitol riots. The committee is investigating how Trump's supporters stormed the building in a challenge to Joe Biden's win. In January of this year, the former president claims that the record request is a political ploy. Australian police are continuing to search for a 4-year-old girl who went missing from an outback campsite on Saturday. Cleo Smith was holidaying with her family at the Blowholes campsite in McLeod, around 560 miles north of Perth. British Army veteran on trial for charges linked to a fatal shooting during the Northern Ireland Troubles has died after contracting COVID-19. 8-year-old Dennis Hutchings denied the attempted murder of 27-year-old John Pat Cunningham. Mr Cunningham was fatally shot in the back as he ran from an army patrol in the Tyrone village of Bembab in 1974. The British Museum is to display the world's oldest surviving map of the stars. The 3,600-year-old Nebra sky disk, first discovered in Germany in 1999, is considered one of the most important archaeological finds of the 20th century. Now, Kanye West has legally changed his name to Ye after a Los Angeles court approved his application. In August, the rapper formally requested to change his name to Ye, citing personal reasons. The 44-year-old first alluded to his plans to change his name in 2018 when he tweeted, formerly known as Kanye West, "I am Ye." For the benefit of any doubt, I am Kay. Almost 1 in 3 people in the music industry lost their jobs as a result of the pandemic, according to a new report. The trade body UK Music said 69,000 jobs were wiped out as the sector struggled with the devastating impact of COVID. Our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer, reports.
In the libraries, they've rewritten the books.
We literally just finished mastering this new album at the end of February, and then the whole world closed down.
When really they're crooks.
There was no time to plan. The reality of live music shutting down overnight meant 18 of the most challenging months of Roxanne Sebastian's career, financially and mentally.
My release got pushed back, all my live dates got cancelled. So that was quite a bleak moment.
And Roxanne was relatively lucky. A new report into what happened shows that in the space of a year, COVID wiped out 69,000 music jobs. That's almost 1 in 3. And the industry's economic contribution almost halved from £5.8 billion in 2019 to £3.1 billion last year. Industry trade body UK Music is calling on the government to come up with a recovery plan.
We need support from the government to resolve that touring crisis. But also we're looking at things like VAT. We had VAT reduced over the course of the pandemic. Now, just as we're coming into recovery, we're seeing government planning to raise that VAT back up to 20%. We want to see that reduced VAT made permanent.
Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries says the government will continue to back the music industry every step of the way. But for critics, it isn't just concern about COVID alone, but the combined impact alongside arts education cuts.
The talent pipeline of really successful musicians that we've had in the UK is in danger of being choked off. I think what it needs government is to actually sit down and understand the sector, listen to the people who work in it.
In a sector where 3/4 are self-employed, many weren't covered by government support schemes.
The reality is that the vast majority of artists are independent artists like myself, or artists trying to forge a career. And we need support for a new generation of artists and for independent artists.
This is ordinary.
Without that safety net of support, not only do we risk losing the next big British star, but also the industry that comes with it. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
You're wondering where those pictures are, aren't you, from La Palma? Here they are. Have a quick look. Oh my goodness, these are live, I'm guessing, Dan, are they? Yeah, I think these are live pictures. Oh my goodness, should we have a quick listen? That's amazing, isn't it? It has been erupting now for more than 4 weeks, we're told. 7,000 people on the island have been displaced. A lot of this lava finds its way down to the sea and toxic gas as a result. So only 30,000 people actually live on the island. Something like 1,700 properties have been evacuated so far. But it does look as though, oh my goodness, it looks as though it will continue on for some time to come, is what we're being told by a volcanologist. We spoke to one, didn't we, last week, I think, and we said that we would check up with him again this week, didn't we? Laura will get on that for you. Have a look, have another quick listen. It's really, really dramatic stuff. Well, yeah, I don't think that is subsiding any day soon, is it? keeping an eye on that for you, and we'll track down that volcanologist as well. Nothing like that at home as far as the weather is concerned here. In fact, it's going to be pretty mild, pretty unsettled thanks to a southwesterly wind, and it's going to turn colder from tomorrow. Yay. Oh no, that's Kanye, isn't it? Mixing them up. I'm here all week. Try the veal. The government announces plans to offer households £5,000 grants to swap their gas boiler for a low-carbon heat pump. Talking to Caroline Lucas, Green MP and member of the House of Commons Environmental Audit Select Committee next. People will be able to apply, I'm being told, for grants of several £1,000s to ditch their gas boiler and change to heating that produces lower emissions, all part of the government's plan to hit its climate targets. Earlier, I spoke to the International Trade Secretary, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, and asked her if it was going to be a voluntary scheme.
Of course, this is a voluntary scheme, but every 10 to 15 years, and I've spoken to my local gas teams about this, we all get a new boiler. There is a change, the equipment doesn't last forever. So as part of, as I say, the transition, this journey to net zero, as we as domestic citizens make changes to our homes, these support frameworks, these financial frameworks are there, but also we will be driving those changes in regulation so that the next time you maybe want to change the boiler in your home, the opportunity will be to either have a heat pump or indeed perhaps, as I have, a hydrogen-ready boiler, so that this will be part of the transition.
Tamara's here. Don't know whose teeth I've got in today, but let's see. Let's hope it improves. Tell me what you made of what Anne-Marie Trevelyan had to say.
So this is a big strategy that we've been waiting for a long time, because to slash our emissions, we need to make big changes to our homes and lifestyles. And the government are going to provide £5,000 grants for us to get rid of our gas boilers and to have these more environmentally friendly heat pumps instead. Now, Boris Johnson is at pains to say, he's writing in The Sun today, that you won't have to, no green police are going to rip your boiler out and force you to have one. We just hope that when your boiler comes to the end of its life, you will consider the benefits of investing in one of these. Now, Anne-Marie Trevelyan said it will be voluntary in the short term, suggesting they might want to make it compulsory down the line. But that depends on all the economics working out, because the amount of money they put into it would allow around 90,000 households to have one of these. Obviously, if we're all intended to have one by 2035, they're going to have to really step it up, or the costs are going to have to fall dramatically, because they cost more than £5,000 now. So that means putting in some money yourself. And she talked about those who want to crack on getting the chance to. But the question is, when will this filter down to everybody else? And she pointed out that for it to really work, your home needs to be insulated, and there is no plan for the government to pay for that at present.
OK, for now, Tamara, thanks. Tomorrow's Take at 9 o'clock this morning. Thank you. Joining us, Sir David King, Chair of the Climate Crisis Advisory Group. Hello to you, Sir David. Thank you for joining us on the programme this morning. So we all should have these heat pumps or the equivalent, and they're going to cost about £10,000 each. The government has got enough for 90,000 homes at £5,000 apiece. Maths is not there as yet, is it?
This is a very small step in the right direction. So I've got to, first of all, welcome it. But you're quite right. 90,000 homes is not going to get across to the British public in general. And the question of home insulation. But there's a very big agenda here. As we green our economy, which we have to do, this is an investment in our future. We really have to have a comprehensive policy. So what are we doing about home insulation? What are we doing about our continued use of gas for electricity production? Is that going to eventually also be wiped out? And what are the timelines on all of this? Yes, we know that our boilers have a lifetime and we shouldn't replace them before they're ready to be replaced. But can we be sure that nobody will replace their boilers with old-fashioned boilers instead of these new ones? I think the voluntary nature of the scheme threatens its rollout. But I really want to see a comprehensive strategy on deep emissions reduction. The Prime Minister made a promise at the G7 this year saying we will reduce our emissions by 70% 78% by 2035. 78%, and we're close on 50% now. How does he make up the gap between where we are now and that 78%? I'm not criticizing the 78%. It was an excellent announcement. But we, as a government, we can't look in two directions. We've really got to set out a comprehensive strategy from moving right away from fossil fuels. We've been very successful, and this is not a tribute to this government, but to prior governments, in ruling out the use of coal for electricity production. And then we get an announcement of a possible new coal mine in Cumbria. So we're really not being coherent. And what is required as an investment in our future is that we have a coherent strategy.
I mean, Greta Thunberg, you'll know when she heard the 78% figure from Boris Johnson said, and I'm quoting her, blah, blah, blah. Do you agree?
I think Greta is a wonderful spokesperson. So what she says should be making the politicians think. We got promises from 197 nations in 2015 that they would reduce emissions. There is not one country in the world, and I have to include Britain, that has delivered on all of their promises. Now, what we need is considerably more than was promised in 2015. But, for example, the wealthy countries agreed in 2009 to fund $100 billion a year into a green climate fund based in Seoul to assist the developing countries of the world to make the transition and to prepare for the challenges of climate change. That has never happened. It has never been more than a total sitting in that budget of $20 billion, let alone $100 billion a year. That is blah, blah, blah. What we have to show is that we can deliver, and let's hold the politicians' feet to the fire. We really cannot afford to fall back on this because, frankly, we are in a climate crisis. The future looks very bleak unless we can persuade our politicians to really deliver on this.
Can I just ask you to pop your international sage hat on? I don't mean international, do I? I mean independent. And as far as boosters are concerned, I did put that to the Minister as well, and she said that she was reasonably happy with the rollout of the booster scheme. And yet we've had 40,000 people test positive for COVID yesterday. What do you think?
I think the booster scheme has been rolled out extremely slowly. It's very surprising given the success of the vaccination scheme, which was conducted through the NHS in an amazingly professional way, which we would expect from the NHS, as distinct from the test, trace and isolate scheme pushed into new private sector companies that couldn't possibly deliver on time. So we've had disastrous operations. But I think the booster rollout, I've had my booster, but I do know many older people who haven't yet had their booster. And so I cannot understand this. If the vaccines are available, what's happening to the rollout?
And why do you think it is? I mean, I went for mine a couple of weeks ago, very well organised. Shout out to my local booster centre vaccine clinic. They were absolutely amazing, a well-oiled machine. But I was also surprised that there weren't as many people there as when I'd had my other 2 previous inoculations. If you don't have your booster, what does that mean with the winter ahead?
Well, I think the government would be right to roll this booster scheme out properly. I have exactly the same experience as you. I went along, I was treated very quickly because there weren't that many people there. But it was all a very efficient operation, professionally run. But I think what is the danger we're faced with? We're seeing it already. The number of new cases per day at close to 40,000 per day. And we soon will have the big climate change COP meeting in Glasgow, where we're expecting maybe 25, 30,000 people. Certainly there will be about 4,000 negotiators there, and then the rest of the people who attend these meetings. And we're also, by the way, hearing about people walking in the streets, maybe 100,000 of them. I think that's going to be a massive potential rollout of the disease. It's a viral factory to put all those people together from 197 nations of the world. So I really worry about it, not because they will bring disease into us, but because we are the country with a very high level of virus, and we will be passing it on to them, and then off they go back to their country. So I think it's really been badly run. How many people are still wearing masks? And for goodness sake, why not? I just don't understand why, when I get into a train or an underground, I don't see everybody wearing masks. It's a very simple operation. We got over any fear of wearing masks many, many months ago. Why aren't we still requiring people to travel with masks, to go into buildings with masks? It just seems a very simple thing. And the disease is rising to yet another peak, and this peak could be as serious as the last.
OK. Sir David, always great to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time to join us this morning. Thank you. Caroline Lucas, Green Party MP for Brighton Pavilion, is with us. Have you had, you're not old enough to have your booster yet, but you've been double jabbed. How concerned are you, before we get on to climate change, about what's happening with 40,000 people registered as having contracted COVID yesterday?
Well, I share Sir David's concerns. I think it is deeply worrying that the government isn't setting a much better example, frankly. Just have a quick look at the House of Commons and you just see rows and rows of people, certainly on the government sides, with no mask at all. I don't see why, as Sir David said, we're not having masks in crowded places, in public transport and so forth. I think as well that we need to get ventilation much better. Ventilation in our schools still hasn't been rolled out at the speed that it needs. And I recognise, of course, that there is an issue with having been one of the first countries to get those vaccinations. It also means that we need to get the boosters fast. And so we certainly need to be looking at what's going wrong in terms of rolling that out more effectively. But I think there is a cause for concern here. And I think the government is showing a remarkable complacency.
Something that we also need to roll out, certainly as far as you're concerned, and the government will be making the point later on today, are these heat pumps. But it is going to be voluntary, at least for now, is what we heard from the government minister this morning. Do you think that's the right way forward?
No, I don't. And I think everyone's in a bit of shock this morning, to be honest, because we all thought that there was going to be a legal requirement by a certain date in the 2030s, whether that's 2032 or 2035, that beyond that date, there would be it would be legally impossible to buy a new gas boiler. Now we're just hearing that the government is backtracking on that. And I think what you can see here really is the impact of an almighty row between the Treasury and Number 10, and the Treasury has clearly won, and therefore the funding that's really required to get these heat pumps into people's homes fast enough simply isn't there. So I think that's one real concern, that we don't have the funding to really scale up at the kind of pace that we need on these heat pumps. And secondly, it seems just such an extraordinary omission not to have put in at the same package a really comprehensive home insulation scheme. We know that heat pumps are only going to work well if your home is insulated, and there simply isn't enough money in this package to properly insulate homes either. So I'm afraid this is yet another of Boris Johnson's, big flagship policies that when you start to look at some of the details, they're simply not there. And that on the eve of the COP climate summit, this big Glasgow summit in a couple of weeks' time, I think that's sending a very bad signal.
And as far as insulating your homes is concerned, do you still think that it's a good idea for environmental protesters to sit down and block the M25?
I've said before that I think what they should be blocking is the Treasury. I think we need to be putting the pressure on those people who are making these decisions. It's not motorists on the M25 who are making decisions about rolling out insulation. It's Rishi Chancellor, the fossil fuel chancellor, in the Treasury. So that's where we need to be putting pressure. I'm really sorry that it looks as if the Treasury has won out in the battle over whether or not enough funding is going to be put into this programme. You only have to compare the UK with other countries in terms of how we're doing rolling out heat pumps. We've basically only put out around a quarter of the heat pumps that they have in Germany, a sixth of the number that they have in Italy, a tenth of the number in France. So we're really lagging behind other European countries. This was the opportunity to scale up at the speed and at the scale that the science demands, and the government's flunked it. And that is a real tragedy, both for all of those people who are living in fuel poverty, who can't afford to keep their homes warm, but also in terms of our climate emissions as well. The kind of insulation programme that so many people want to see, this comprehensive street by street, local authority led programme, would not only get people's emissions down, it would get their fuel bills down, but it would also create hundreds of thousands of jobs in every single constituency in the country. It is a massively lost opportunity.
You're not advocating, I should say, the blocking of government buildings, though, are you really?
I'm advocating, when it's necessary, peaceful direct action, and I've never been afraid to do that, and I've taken that kind of action myself.
That would be illegal, wouldn't it, to block a government building? That'd be illegal, wouldn't it? The whole point about peaceful direct action is that you create some kind of obstruction. What I'm simply saying is that rather than, if you're going to take... Blocking the Treasury would be illegal.
Sometimes there are bigger illegalities. We're facing at the moment the issue of an existential threat to life on Earth. I think that in that context, if people do choose to take peaceful direct action, they're legitimate to do that. They take the legal consequences.
It's not legitimate, though.
What I'm suggesting, Kay, if I could just finish, what I'm suggesting is,
I'm challenging
on the
you.
M25
We're having a robust conversation. You're advocating people breaking the law, blocking the doors to the Treasury, and I'm saying that's illegal. And I'm asking you to say whether you are advocating people acting in an illegal way for the greater good. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that sometimes when there is a greater illegality, if you like, if you think about our legal commitments to get our emissions down, if you think about the fact that climate change poses an existential threat to life on Earth, I'm saying that sometimes there are occasions when peaceful direct action is legitimate, even if that means breaking the law if it's done in a peaceful way. I'm saying that rather than blocking the M25, where what you're essentially doing is putting yourself in the way of people who have absolutely no influence over government policy, if people are choosing to take that kind of action, it would make an awful lot more sense to do it when the people that they are focusing on are the decision makers. Right now, we've got a decision maker in the Treasury, the Chancellor, who is not putting the funding behind the kind of programme that we need to see to get our homes insulated, to shift away from the fossil fuel economy. That is one of the most serious issues that we face today. And I'm saying that I think if people do take peaceful direct action in that cause, then I could quite understand why they would do that.
Yeah, but it can't be legitimate if it's illegal. That's an oxymoron.
No, it's not. The suffragettes, the civil rights movement...
Yeah, they got arrested. They were arrested, and then the law was subsequently changed, but it was illegal, so they were arrested.
I'm not arguing about whether it's legal or not. What I'm arguing about...
Yeah, you were. You said it was legitimate action. It's not legitimate if it's illegal.
That's where I'm differing with you, Kay. I'm saying that there can be action that is both illegal and legitimate in certain circumstances. I'm certainly not advocating it lightly, but I am saying, for example, when I was arrested for intervening, sitting down outside a fracking protest, I was subsequently found to not have committed a crime, but I sat down there, I was arrested for that. I was prepared to take the legal consequences because fracking was on the front line of a whole new fossil fuel industry. I think that right now, when literally what we're talking about is the livability of this planet going forward, I would not want to be able to look into the eyes of future generations and explain why I didn't take every peaceful action that I could to try to make sure that we get our emissions down. Right now, what we're talking about is this government's new plan. The sadness is, the tragedy is that the plan is not going to be enough to get us where we need to be, even according to the government's own advisors, the Committee on Climate Change. And therefore, I think it is right that people make as much noise as possible to try to put pressure on the government to step up and put in place the policies that we need.
OK, good to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time and arguing the case from your perspective this morning. Much appreciated, as always. Thank you. US President Joe Biden faces big trouble ahead of COP26 as one of his own senators continues to block the progress of a multi-trillion-dollar clean energy bill. Joe Manchin, a moderate from West Virginia, says the bill contains clauses that could hurt his state's coal mining industry, as our US correspondent Mark Stone reports.
Could this be the man to scupper key American pledges at the Glasgow Climate Conference? A senator from West Virginia, Joe Manchin is a name we could hear lots over the coming days. A conservative Democrat sticking up for his coal-reliant state workers, but at what cost for our changing climate?
Over the other side of the Atlantic, you are now being cast as the man, the politician who may scupper
the COP climate conference. What's your response to that?
No, I said, my goodness, we've done more for climate and changed the climate basically in America faster than any other country on earth in the last 10 years.
But you're watering down...
about one thing. No, you're talking about one thing, the Clean Energy Standard, correct?
Yes.
CCTV?
Yes.
That's paying utilities $150 billion?
Yeah, but you are watering down a very, very ambitious climate.
No, not at all. You need to read the facts and see what's happening in the world. Look what happens in China, what's happening in Russia. Look what's going on over in your country.
Coal is still a central part of the American energy sector and the landscape across the country. In West Virginia, most industry workers are in the mines. Coal fuels the economy in one of the country's poorest states, where Senator Manchin is also an investor in the industry. Joe Biden is trying to push a huge $3.5 trillion bill through Congress. Crucially, it contains big climate change pledges. Earlier this month, Biden's climate envoy John Kerry told Sky News of the sweeping plan to decarbonize America's energy sector.
The sausage making is not pretty, but in the end, they're going to have a sausage, I believe.
The question now is, will they? But you want those coal mines in your state to stay open?
Make sure we have reliable power. We have basically cleaned up the environment more than any other time in the history of this world.
So the coal plants, they can all close in your state?
No, they're not going to close in the state. You can't close them with reliability. We need reliability.
America's ability to hit its carbon reduction targets and its ability to persuade other nations to do the same now rests here on Capitol Hill, where the pledges to save the planet are up against politics, people and jobs. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.
Maldives has welcomed more than 900,000 tourists this year, despite only opening its border to international travel in July. Figures from the Tourism Ministry of the Maldives reveal arrivals are more than 22% higher than in 2020. Joined now by the Minister of Tourism for the Maldives, that's Abdullah Mausum. Hello to you. Thank you for joining us. Why do you think so many people are coming to the Maldives?
Thank you, Kay. Maldives is loved by tourists because we have got such a beautiful product. And after the COVID, when the world was closed, we were open and we were able to give a very good experience. The tourists who came here, they showed the world that Maldives is open. The new normal is very normal in the Maldives. So we are welcoming more tourists day by day, and we are happy that finally, UK has given green light for the Maldives, and we look forward to having a very eventful season in the coming months and also in year 2022.
What's the vaccine rollout been like on the Maldives?
Oh, it has been fantastic because the government gave very high priority for the industry workers. So the tourism sector employees, 99% has taken their first dose and 93% are fully vaccinated, and the population at large also very much vaccinated. And the life here is very normal now. You can ask from the tourists, you can see the posts by tourists.
That's amazing, Minister. I'm so sorry, we are out of time. Thank you so much for sharing those pictures with us. We'll see you at the top of the hour. We're taking you to Bermuda next week.